All right. Get over to our overlay here. Look at our first story of the morning. And so looks like December or probably mid-December, PlayStation 5 ROM keys had been leaked out. Sony's been scrambling to try to fix this. But there's not much they can do. Uh, let's see. This comes from Tom's Hardware. PlayStation 5 ROM keys leaked. Jailbreaking could be made easier with boot ROM codes. They're claiming you still won't get a jailbroken PS5 with this leak, but it will make it easier for hackers to compromise the console's bootloader. PlayStation 5's ROM keys have allegedly been leaked, meaning anyone who can get their hands on the hex string now has the hardware code that will allow jailbreakers to try to de-encrypt and analyzing the console's bootloader, according to the cybersecurity guru. This is an unpatched problem for Sony because these keys cannot be changed and are burned directly into the APU. The only way that the company can invalidate the leaked codes is to replace the chips on yet to be manufactured units, meaning the consoles that are already in the wild could possibly take advantage of future jailbreaks stemming from the use of these leaked codes. Yeah, there's going to be really no way that they're going to be able to fix that issue with the countless PS5s that are out there. However, is what they will probably do, and they might mention it down in here later, is they will probably just brick your PS5 if you end up being able to mod it in the future. However, if you do that at the claims of if you don't update your PS5 to the latest firmware version, you'd be okay. But I don't see that really fixing your issue because I want to say most of your games on your PS5 are online regardless. So you're going to have to connect to the net. If your firmware is not up to date to a certain point, you're probably not going to be able to access the net to play those games. So while you might be able to get a few things, maybe some older games on there, or whenever the hackers figure out how to actually get the guy modded, like they have in the past with older systems. But I really doubt seeing anything coming from this. When you turn the PS5, its CPU runs the boot ROM code that's baked into the chip and uses the ROM keys to ensure the bootloader is valid. Now that the ROM keys have been leaked, and assuming they are valid, a hacker then could decrypt and study the official bootloader and the potential use that is starting point to understand how the PS5's boot system works. Since the issue is at a hardware level, Sony would be able to release an update that will stop the consoles with the compromised chip from loading kernel level exploits. It's in the future, should one become available. They're going to just try to block it from the network side as much as they can. And note that this leak does not automatically mean that they will see jailbroken PS5s on the market right now, especially as Sony has other security measures that hackers need to bypass. However, the appearance of these codes means that one of the biggest security features of the console has likely already been compromised, making it easier for those working on creating custom firmware to have deeper understanding of how the console works and use that knowledge to maybe build a modified or even totally different operating system for it. What we might see too with this is maybe outside of just modding the PS5 for pirating games and movies and etc., is you might start seeing more hacker software on the console side of things. Is where people have worried about it on the PC. We're probably going to start seeing it come about on the PS5. But that's going to be dependent on how Sony runs their network firmware or updates on the consoles themselves. Take a drink real quick. This isn't the first time Sony has had to deal with a security crisis with this popular PlayStation family. The PlayStation 3 was obviously hit with a vulnerability when the company made a mistake with their cryptography on the console, allowing users to install homebrew software and allowing piracy, cheating, on popular titles. Words are hard this morning. Okay. We also see this with the Nintendo Switch when a flaw in the NVIDIA Tegra X1 chip that it used to let tinkerers run Linux on the handheld. Sony has yet to release a statement regarding the hack, but the company could release a revised hardware in the near future to rectify the situation. Another solution is to issue a recall for all existing PS5 consoles on the market and replace their motherboard to change the hardware codes. But this is unlikely to happen, as it's either going to be costly for the company, or gamers would be unwilling to pay extra for the mistake that was ultimately not theirs. Yeah, I highly doubt we're going to see a recall on all of these products, because they're not going to hand you out a brand new system for it. Right? They're not going to change out those motherboards. They're going to have to print new chips and replace the old ones. That's going to cost them fathoms of money. I doubt they're going to see it. Like I said, I think they're going to mitigate as much as possible on their network side. I think they're going to try to push firmware updates that are going to actively check your console's coding and make sure that you haven't changed anything or modded it in any manner. We could eventually see this. It's, like I said, affect hacking on the console side. Right, for games. Maybe COD's going to get a little worse. Who knows? But yeah, I doubt they're going to send out new ones. They're going to start producing new chips, new keys, and they're going to try to mitigate this last problem. Saw this pop up. Thought it was kind of interesting. Boston Dynamics is training an AI-powered humanoid robot to do factory work. With rapid advances in artificial intelligence, computer scientists and engineers are making progress in developing robots that look and act like humans. Global race is underway to develop humanoid robots for widespread use. Boston Dynamics has established itself as a frontrunner in the field, with support from the Korean and car maker Hyundai, which owns 88% stake in Boston Dynamics. The Massachusetts company is testing a new generation of its humanoid robot at Atlas. The past October, 5 foot 9 inch, 200-pound Atlas was put to the test at Hyundai's new Georgia factory, where it practiced autonomously sorting roof racks next an assembly line. Today's AI-powered humanoid are learning movements that until recently were considered a step too far for a machine, according to Scott Kent. Oh my gosh, can't say that one. Queen Dersma, who is head of robotics research of Boston Dynamics. A lot of this has to do with how we're going about programming these robots now, where it's more about teaching and demonstration and machine learning than manual programming. Queen Dersma said. Thought this was interesting. I always saw people complaining about $15 hour minimum wage, and then for McDonald's, and lo and behold, kiosks came in and took out some of those jobs. I honestly thought they were going to kind of have assembly line and burger makers kind of replace a lot of it. I was surprised that we hadn't seen any of that. But if they're able to run this side of things in a factory setting, you might start seeing that get rolled out later in the future, depending on how much it's costing to run these little robots. That's because they got to build them, the chips got to be made, and what's the availability of chips. That's might be something I need to pull up here later and do a video on, is the RAM situation and or crisis going on right now with all of the AI being pushed out. Anyways, that was this morning's chat. Thank you for joining me. And I look to catch y'all all on the next one.